It happens to all of us. You send out a call and boom, a response. You follow the script, move in and find the perfect setup, throw out another call, and then crickets. Just what went wrong? Was it something you did? Is there something you could have done differently? Well, y'all, on today's show, it's all about mistakes or misreading the situation when it comes to an Elk's response. Just what are those mistakes and what are some possible solutions? That discussion, our ElkBros shout outs and questions from our awesome ElkBros mailbox. So my friends, pull up a chair, adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your hosts Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gilly. You want to hunt elk? They live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello there, everyone. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy our show. And as always, for us blue collar hunters following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas, the host of your show, coming to you from Spring, Texas. And joining me tonight, we got the full crew. All your elk hunting coaches are in the house. We got the Venezuelan Mafia in the house tonight. Mr. Luis Gonzalez from Katy, Texas, and Manano Grataron from Big D. That's Dallas, Texas. We got the legend in the house from Cuesta, New Mexico, Mr. R.C. Knox, and the ninja from Cimarron, New Mexico, Mr. Leroy Chavez. And that's right, WWJGD is in the house and ready to tee it up. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on, Big O?
What's up, brothers?
What's happening, guys?
It's getting close.
Been a while since the core
20
ElkBros team's been together.
Yeah, it's been a while for the
Absolutely,
Yeah,
guys.
because the
Tonight is
Mafia-
episode 199.
episode.
Well, I
one.
mean, when the mafia is together, then Gilbert decides not to show up. I mean, just messed up.
What, dude? Where are we talking?
And I don't know.
Right.
Well, I mean, I remember you missing a podcast, and it's just not
Yeah,
right.
and then Joe trying to
Tell you right now, if you go to that podcast, I'm on that podcast.
I don't know. I don't
Sadly
know.
mistaken.
Yeah, those editions and recording afterwards, they don't really count.
It don't
It's
matter.
all right. It's all right.
Yeah, no, man.
Yeah. I gotta say this, Beto, don't quit, bro, because ElkBros without you,
I'm never going to quit, bro.
no.
And listen, that was not my call, brothers.
Yeah, I know that, but you have to take it. Please don't quit, bro. Joe is pretty smart, but let Joe just teach people the woods.
Hey Manano, who gave you that haircut on those glasses, man? What is up with that?
I'm blind, bro. Honestly, seriously, this
I mean,
is
I encourage everybody to just go to
for the very first time
YouTube
I'm
channel and
talking
just
about
laugh
serious
looking at
business.
Manano.
I'm blind, bro.
I'm blind.
Getting blind,
Yeah.
honestly.
That happens, man. That happens. When it comes old age, I mean, next year,
You
I'm
got glasses, Joe.
going to celebrate my 62nd birthday next year, and I hope I look as good as you, bro.
Hey, man, two
Like
kids,
66,
and
Oh my
kids and everything.
Man, I was
Got going
looking,
on.
you
Young
may be
kids,
kidding
too.
about it, but I
They
was
make
looking at old videos of
Oh,
us
dude.
hunting. And I was looking at the bear hunt, the time that we, you killed your
Yes.
elk and we killed the bear.
Man, I didn't have
Manano
kids
didn't
back
even
there.
have white hair.
Manano
on his
looked like
head.
19, dude. He looked like I'm telling you.
And from there to now, that was 2019, and it almost looked like 30 years has gone by for Manano.
Bro, I got
Wait.
no kids.
And episode, look, what episode are we on now?
199.
99. The big one's coming.
Episode 200's coming up.
Right.
Yep. And the title of that's going to be
Manano's getting old.
Celebrating the Journey, man. And let me tell you, on Celebrating the Journey, people will see where we were to where we are. And we're going to find out, man. We're going to just see, this guy's always calling me Silverback, old man, blah, blah. You just wait, man. You just wait. Let's see what this journey.
Hey, Manano, what happened that time y'all went by them guys on the trail, and then they told you afterwards, man, we saw an old man and
That was Luis. That was Luis.
Louis said that we saw an old man. It was
With
Joe.
his son.
Joe was so bad.
Yeah. I was like,
Oh,
yeah, he's very old, but he carries himself very good, regardless of his very advanced age.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, all I want everybody to know, man, is those boys that made that comment went home empty. Our boys did not, right?
We
That's
did
right. That's
We
right.
went home with a.
Yeah.
We would come out heavy that year for sure.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, so everybody needs to know too. We want to go ahead and announce that, Gil. Episode 200, celebrating the journey. What's that going to be like?
It's going to be a live show, Joe, here on our YouTube channel. Be taking live calls, questions on our Elk Bros hotline number. That's 505-585-2573. That's 505-585-2573. So you guys tee it up. We'll be ready to hit it deep and take all the questions, man. It won't go totally unleashed, but we're going to have a lot of fun that night.
We're not going to unleash this. Oh, man.
Well, if Guy Duponche is on the call,
Oh,
it's got a
God.
propensity.
It's not going to be good. Mhm.
Shout out to my brother Guy. He got it done in the Lone Star State. Went in there and braved the heat. Him and his buddy tagged 2 really beautiful axis deer. Got it done with their bows. They sat up there sweltering 107-degree heat. He said it was the longest 17-hour ride back he's ever had. He was so wore out. And he said, man, we really didn't do that much but sit up in the heat the whole time. So
But get this,
super
dude.
proud of
He texts me from his phone, right? And he's like, all these things are making these sounds and stuff. And he's like, I'm starting to play with the grinder and trying to mimic them, right? And I was like, dude, there ain't no way I'm sitting in that blind at that temperature. Dude, I'm like calling something in. I mean, there's no way. And so he starts doing it. And doggone, he goes, man, he's texting me. He's like, they're responding. And he ends up calling in the Axis buck and smoking that dude at 27 yards, man.
Jeez, that's awesome.
Beautiful deer, man. Beautiful deer, and he put a good shot on him. And at the end of the day, those axis deer are super tough. He really doesn't understand what he's done. Taking an axis with your bow is an extremely tough scenario. They're so smart. They're so wary. They got such a great nose, great eyesight, man. And I mean, they're one of the true Texas trophies here with your bow, that and a nilgai. And I'm telling you, it's so hot down here. It's the rut time for them, mid-June to late July, August.
He's making in 103-degree weather, man.
And that weekend I was out on the lease, and it was brutal. I mean,
Oh my God.
the temperatures were over 108, 109 degrees base temperatures, and with the thermal sensation was close to 115.
I don't
out
know
there.
who's selling
It was brutal.
camo these days, but I know, his uniform on that day came down to his underwear. He stripped down to his chones, dude. He had his shirt hanging up in there,
You got to keep the sun off of him, man. He was up in a little tree ladder, and I'm telling you, I've been there. I killed a 36 by 36. I mean, an absolute giant axis hanging in my living room. And I had to hunt for him 3 days on a really good friend of mine's ranch who absolutely grows some of the largest axis deer in the state of Texas. The name of that ranch is South Hills Ranch, and Mr. Bill Watson has an unbelievable ranch there. And I'm telling you, it took me 3 days sitting in a hot box to get these axes figured out. And then look, when they come in, they're so nervous. They want to jump every string. And I mean, I got lucky and I shot him right at 30 yards. And I mean, it was a goat roping, man, because that son of a gun liked to run through the blind with me when I hit him. And
it was a goat roping. Is that what you called it, dude?
Yeah, it's a goat roping, man. I'm telling you, it's
I had him.
It got pure Western, but I mean, deer died within, I don't know, probably 45 yards of the blind. But if you've ever hunted in South Texas, 45 yards from your blind can seem like half a mile because it's all stickers and
Yeah.
brush that it has bad attitudes and lots of critters scratch or poke you. So I mean, guy did a great job, and they retrieved both their animals. I mean, unbelievable. When you talk about bow hunting in South Texas, it's a tough
Did you see how
chore.
long his blood trail was?
Yeah, man, DRT, dude. I
Yep.
mean, shoot,
Dead
dude.
right there. 1.5 feet was his blood trail, man.
That's how you want to do it, baby. I
oh
mean, you
yeah.
know,
Drilled him.
knock them down, keep them down. That's what I do.
especially in South Texas.
Ooh.
Yep.
And man, he's hunting 65 miles north of my ranch,
Yeah.
I know exactly the country he's hunting in, about maybe 70 miles, but I mean, it's brutal. It's brutal country. It's hot, lots of snakes. I mean, anyway, shout out to the
Guy du Planche got it done.
Western Contours podcast extraordinaire Guy du Planche and his buddy from Pacamount Apparel, man. They got it done.
Yep.
Yes, sir. So let's move over
Pretty
to
cool.
Elk Bros mailbox. Chav, you want to start us out, brother?
Okay, our first two questions are from Aubrey Strickland from the state of Washington. And she asks, after putting up a game cam, how long do you wait before you go check on it? And how often should you enter the area? Well, if you don't have that Wi-Fi internet stuff, I'm not sure how often you want to go in there, but if you do, just go in the middle of the day when they're bedded down, and I don't think you'll disturb a whole lot. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, Aubrey, you need to check your rules and regulations because a lot of states, including New Mexico, do not allow Wi-Fi cameras and cellular cameras to be out there for scouting for elk or hunting for them. So it's okay as long as it doesn't have Wi-Fi or camera. Or
if you go pull a card, yeah, all right. Mm-hmm.
It's if you just go and pulling cards, you can use them in New Mexico, but you might check your regs to make sure that those cell cameras with Wi-Fi are usable in Washington. But if they are, then yeah, man, I check mine weekly when I go to the ranch or something like that.
Okay, so
We'll check
boss, what if they're on like a 5-day hunt and they put out cameras, right? And I can kind of see where this question is going. I was like, man, I got to back out of this because I have never used a game cam in my life. And but I know that there's a lot of people go out and set one up in an area and, just see what's happening. And,
That's a great point, Joe. I mean, everything from, the depends is pretty much the answer here. To your point is it a temporary camera? How long is your hunt?
Right.
Also, what are the capabilities of the batteries of that camera, or the capabilities of the memory of the camera? It all depends, right? I mean, if it's just during your hunt and you're dead for 2 weeks, every other day in the middle of the day, as Chap mentioned, is probably a good idea to go and check it.
And the sun will burn off any scent.
Depending on where it's at, if it's on a wallow or something like that, you don't want to go in there midday.
It's very true.
You want to see, may want to see if the animals are going in there midday, but you got to pick a day to go in there and check it out. If I'm hunting, probably every couple of days I'm checking it, and if we can pattern them. If I'm there scouting, I'm probably checking it every couple of days and seeing what the elk movement are. The big thing is trying to pattern the animals' movements, and that's what you're trying to do. But for me, you're 100% like Luis said, everything depends on your scenario, right? Are we hunting private land? Are we hunting public land? Are you hunting over, are you hunting over a clear cut? Are you hunting over any kind of burn? Are you hunting over water? Are you hunting over a wallow? I mean, those are things that go into how long we let it sit.
To me, and this is just me, but during the actual hunt, I almost think that, it might give you something to do there, but I almost think it's a waste of your resource. I really do.
It's not.
I've been around people that have game cams all over the ranch and stuff like that, and I don't know many times during a hunt period, right, that they've killed an elk that they got on a game cam, right? Because there's so much activity going on especially if you're hunting the rut time of year and those elk are moving around, the pressure cause them to move and change some of their stuff. I and if you're like the whole wallow and water thing, to me, yeah, you can see which critters are coming in there at certain times, but and maybe you can see if there's a pattern, but like I've had access to see some cams here lately, and I don't really see patterns. I see hit or miss because they might go to this water source this day because the cows led them to a feed area here and ended up going to another feed area, so they hit a different water source. To me, it's almost a waste of your resource. To me, there might be a lot of people I think, nah, no, we've had a lot of luck. Maybe like in Arizona or someplace, those places that, and I think they've restricted those during hunting seasons in a bunch of states now, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Especially if they're Wi-Fi or
Yeah.
cellular.
Well,
Yeah, I
like
mean-
Arizona, there's no game cams, I think, during the hunting season. Utah either, right? So
I think you got a point, Joe, because at the end of the day, when the style of hunting that we do, we're looking for sign. Okay, so the sign is going to be there. If you're inspecting an area, if the elk have been there or not, based on the sign. The camera is just really confirming exactly what kind of
What is
animal.
that?
How big is that cow? How big is that bull?
Or multiple,
yeah.
cows.
yeah.
Which
Now,
would you still the sign is still kind of tell you that if
And I'm going to kind of argue with myself a little bit. I'm going to be the devil's advocate to Joe as well. It's like if I was solo and maybe there were other areas that I was wondering if there were elk in that country, right? I might set something up
that
on
makes sense.
a trail or in an area to see something and then
Yeah,
hunt.
you're trying to cover more area.
Right.
Now you're
Yeah.
talking. That's how they use them.
Yeah. And then I might hunt one area, for 2 days. And if I didn't have any luck, I might go pop during midday and pop those cameras and see if there's, if there's something in that area. Not necessarily to give me a time of day that they're there, but just to let me know that there's critters in the area. Right.
I think you're right on as far as make sure that you go midday because of the sunshine. The sunshine will burn your scent off better than anything. So.
Yeah, so I think Chav hit that all right. And so, Aubrey, to help you and not just say you shouldn't use them, I mean, yeah, there can be a reason why, especially if you're solo or even if you're with a partner and you guys don't have the resource to check other areas and you just want to see what's in there. What I would do is set them, I'd give them 2 days, just, a chance to see if that there's something in that area, hunt another spot that I think is my spot A, and if spot A doesn't pan out, I'm going to go midday. We can split up, buddy, go pull them from one, you pick them from one and pull those and see what critters are in those areas. Might tell you something and give you an option B to do, and I think that's, a way to look at it. So.
Okay, the second question is a little bit longer. It says, I am group hunting this year. My question is, if one of us gets an elk down, what effect does this have on the area? Will the other elk move out? How long will they stay gone? Can we keep working the area or do we need to move on? I know I have heard you guys talk about having multiple bulls down at once, but the scenario I am curious about is getting only one down, then we begin breaking the animal down and packing it out. But once that's done, can we come back to the area immediately or have they hightailed it out of there? In my
Get a bear
experience,
tag.
my experience is, after 3 days, there's almost nothing left of that animal. But I think as early as the following day, there's still going to be activity in that area.
Right.
That's the way I have observed. So, what are you guys' thoughts on
Most
that?
definitely. Most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, how long so Manano killed his cow, and how long was it after that I killed that bull there?
Next day, wasn't it?
Just next day
Later?
Yeah.
in the morning.
The next morning.
The next morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're used to animals being killed by other predators and stuff like that. So I think it's almost an everyday occurrence for them. They can avoid that little tiny area, but they're still going to be in the area.
I ended up calling the bull in that Manano or that Luis almost shot at.
He drew on him.
Yeah, he drew on the bull. I ended up killing him the next couple days later on a bull.
We both drew on that bull, Manano and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we've
So yeah, I mean, when you find out there's elk in the area, they're going to keep coming in there and using it.
I think we killed three elk. We killed three elk probably within, I don't know, 300 yards of each other, you know, in an area, because it was an area that the animals go through. And like Chav said, they might not go exactly, you know, they might avoid it by 20, 30, 50 yards, but they don't vacate the area. To what we've seen, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, even that one year that Gilbert killed that, you killed one by a fence line.
Yeah.
When we went back a couple of days later, there was a herd just moving into that same
Through
area.
the fence line. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't.
And a bear. And a bear.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So, you know, it will attract other kind of animals such as bears. So if you have a bear tag, that carcass is going to be great bait.
And
And I
when
think
you
that's
approach that area, man, you need to approach it with caution.
And I
Because
think
I'm
that's the
telling
main
you,
reason
yes.
that the elk probably, you know, shy a little bit to the side, because
Exactly.
that is attracting to a predator, you know. So
Because they're trying to stay away from the coyotes and the
yeah.
and the bears.
Well, the good thing
Mhm.
is they have something to eat, so they're gonna leave them alone, you know.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I agree in general, not long, but I mean, I don't know that it would spook the elk out of the area for long, or, you know, in a big radius.
well,
I think.
I'll give you another example. I can't tell you how many times we've been working an animal, had blood on our hands, blood out, guts out, everything,
Everything
and have another bull come in on top of
come
it.
in.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Happened to me and RC and Brendan when we were breaking my
Mhm.
bull down.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, if somebody had had their bow, they'd have killed another elk.
Yep.
So I hope that helps you out, girl. I think, Aubrey, that those are great questions. I think they're good questions for a lot of people, because a lot of people think that once there's an animal that's been killed in an area, you might as well not go back. And that hasn't been our experience. We really
Right.
don't. You know, the areas that we find elk moving through, the areas that they like to be in, they consistently like to be in there. And we, you know, have killed multiple animals in areas. So.
Yep.
So from West Virginia, we have Mr. Tim Curtis, and his question is, we know the first thing to hunting elk is finding elk, and that splitting up gives us our quickest chance to find them. But my question is, what distance apart is too close for the groups to hunt? I think that's a great question. For example, we have identified a good looking basin, and it looks like we can split and be a mile or so apart and be in good areas. Is that a good game plan to help locate elk, eliminate an area, or the first day, or for the first day or two? Or should we have greater distance between the groups? That's the first question. I think I can.
Yeah, let's work on the first one.
Yeah.
What do you think, Luis?
Yeah, I think all of the above, Joe, in our case, honestly. Because we do try to I think initially what we see is we're spread out more on the at the beginning. First few days, our groups are more spread out. It depends on our e-scouting as well and what areas we have identified. And then as we start to hone in and realize, kind of understanding the patterns better, seeing some of the sign, then you see our area of search to narrow into one, maybe two areas, and then the groups are going to be a lot closer. And we've been so close to each other to where we've bumped into each other out in the woods without planning to do so as well. So I think it has to, there's the progressive thing. You start out with your e-scouting plan in place to where you divide and conquer, but then you start honing in, and then probably your search area narrows down based on, you know, the information that you're gathering from the different groups at night when, you know, you get together and share information. That's at least what we do.
Yep.
But how far would you say we are approximately? And like when we've taken areas that we've been about, how far have we been apart from each other?
We've been 2 to 5 miles at
Yeah.
times.
I was going to say
5
we
miles.
were 5 miles that time in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Where you think we were 5 miles apart in Colorado?
Well, when I killed my bull, y'all dropped in 3 miles from us. Y'all dropped in. It had to be 2.5, 3 miles.
That was a long walk. I remember that.
And that first morning we were,
Oh my God.
we went way over on the
But-
other side, and we were.
But sometimes
we were
way
definitely
over
fine.
seems way over because you drive a lot to get there, and then you kind of curl back in, and as the crow flies, we're not really all that far apart.
I would say
I'd-
a couple miles for,
Yeah. But again, to my point, I think that as the hunt progresses,
we tighten up.
we tighten
Exactly.
up, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we get a lot closer to each other to where like, hey, Beto, you know what? We saw a bull over here. We drew on that bull and spooked it out. Beto goes there to the exact same spot next day and kills that bull. You know, it's just like, and we weren't far from that either. We were probably a couple of miles from there because we had honed in into an area where we had seen the activity. Same thing when we were in Colorado, when we realized that altitude with the elk were hanging out.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all like, hey, the elk are right at 10,300 feet.
Yep.
That's kind of what we've seen every sighting. So all of our search area was right around that height on the relatively on the same ridge too. So it just depends of how quickly you hone in into the area where they're hanging out.
And
my
I
opinion.
think it also depends on like what type of area it is. The more open it is, and stuff like that, there might only be
More space. Yeah.
there might be certain areas, and that area might be 10 miles away. I mean, if it's really dense and thick and it's got a lot of big country in there up and down, you could be closer because just a ridge line is going to keep you separate. You could be a mile apart from each other, but in a whole different world and being able to hear something totally different. And it depends on the type of guys you are, like how far you're able to walk and move and everything in that day and how much you can cover. Because, I mean, I drove an hour and a half from our group to check out an area, in Colorado. I was, I was an hour and a half away to check out from everybody. So sometimes your plan might consist of, all right, what's it like over here, this spot, and like Louis said, we kind of spread out, and that could be anywhere from a mile to daggum 15 miles, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then check out areas, and then we zero in. We start then. And what we did there is after I found the group that I found, and like the area, we picked up camp and moved. And then
In
we
the middle
hit
of the
that
day.
area probably about, I would say probably anywhere from, depending on the group, some of the guys were probably only 1.5 miles to 2 miles apart, right? I'd say we were hitting this area to find out and locate where they were in there. So we kind of then refined, exactly like Luis said. And then, we start to zero in on certain places and then how to hit those elk in there so that somebody in the group, I mean, gosh, we all hit each other one time because, you start following bugles and stuff like that.
The elk bring you
end up in
together.
you could definitely end up in the same place, right?
I mean, there was that one time in New Mexico where we were after the same herd.
In different
And
directions.
we were chasing it from the bottom up, and then Beto was coming in from the top down, and Beto and Chav happened to make the kill at the top, and we were coming from the bottom, and we just happened to bump into them right after the kill.
Thank
So-
you, Jesus.
And because the elk were going through the same places that elk like to go through. So, that can pull you together. I swear to you, man, me and Chav, we could start out in 2 different directions
Yep.
and end up in the same place. Just because we end up finding the elk sign, following the elk sign, and getting into where those elk are congregating, and it puts you together, man. So, to answer your question exactly like that, depending on the type of country, can that split be a mile or so apart? Yes, it could. Could it be, 2 miles apart? Is that a game plan to help eliminate area on the first day or the second? Absolutely, man.
Definitely.
Divide and conquer, come back with information, and then share that info, and then devise a plan to be able to do that. And if you think it's too many in that, and you can always go, well, I still think this is going to be a good area, and while everybody else hunts that one area and broken up in it, you can go find elsewhere. I mean, Cole did that You know, when we were in Colorado, we went to that one area that was a good 5-6 miles away, right? So, yeah.
And I think this is also like prior to this is important to mention the scouting, right? You got to come in with a plan of the areas that you want to hit,
Right.
and then
Eliminate areas that you want to.
save yourself time into coming in with a plan, and because sometimes our hunts are limited in number of days that we can spend out on the woods.
For sure. And in your e-scouting, I think it's a really important thing to mention is in your e-scouting, learn the road systems that are there, man. The trails and the road systems are there will be huge in connecting the dots, getting in between in and out of areas quickly and quietly, so you guys can save your feet some wear and tear as well. That's what, man, when we got to Colorado and we started understanding where these old roads went and stuff like that, it saved us a ton of wear and tear on our feet, getting to the top.
Elk hunting is about, I'll go ahead, Luis.
No, go for it, because I was just going to jump to the next question.
Elk hunting is about efficiency.
That's right.
It's about your efficiency in locating elk. It's about your efficiency on getting into those elk and your efficiency on closing the deal, man. It's all about efficiency. Successful elk hunting is about efficiency. Going
back to Gilbert's comment about Colorado, that's a perfect segue for the next part of the question, which he says is a random question. And he says, when you hunted Colorado, were the mosquitoes awful during September? My wife and I just flew out in mid-July and did some hiking, boots on the ground scouting. We battled and lost to the mosquitoes anywhere from 8,000 to 11,000 feet. Never had issues in September in Idaho, but just wondering if I need to a full body mosquito net come September. And no, we did not.
We didn't have any problems.
Oh, we didn't have any mosquito issues.
We were real close to a body of water too, man. So we didn't have a lot of mosquito issues.
Well, what happened in Colorado?
Cold.
What happened in Colorado this year happened
Monsoons.
in New Mexico, man. Our June was the wettest June we had. And I mean, here at our house was treacherous, man, at the beginning of July.
Yeah.
I mean, from June to beginning, I mean, it was unbelievable. But now, last night, my wife and I were outside on the deck last night, not having to deal with them. You get some of those cold nights, it gets rid of some of those mosquitoes. You're still going to have some of those slow laggers in the morning that move really, really slow and stuff. But we're getting ready to deal with that. I mean, we're going to Canada, and from what we're hearing, man, right now, the mosquitoes are treacherous right now. So, yeah.
On the cells.
Hopefully you don't have that problem when you get there, bud. And it's you're going to have breeches on, you're going to have sleeves down, to your hands, you have gloves on, maybe, if you get the right type of stuff that you can on the skin that doesn't smell, you can keep them off of you, right? So,
hey Beto, what time is it?
Well, you know what time it is. It's time for the ElkBros shout-outs. If you're new to our show, this is
time.
for our followers, the few cities with the most listeners topping our charts this week, Joe.
Yep, and I'm going to send out a reminder, man. Luis, dude, that was perfect, man. That was awesome. I'm going to set out a reminder that on our next show, y'all, you heard it earlier, is our 200th episode. And for those folks leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or giving us a comment on our YouTube channel, and this is very important, you have to include your name and where you're from. We will again be placing your names in our ElkBros Spin a Winner Wheel.
Spin a winner wheel.
Yep, and we're going to be spinning that night for something special. It might even be more than one spin that night. Or, we might even do something with our live audience, because we're going to be live on YouTube. And look, if you want to know how to find us, just go to YouTube, do a search for ElkBros, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and as soon as we go live, it's going to pop up that we're live and you can join us. And we really are excited about this being our 200th. That's why we're calling it, the journey episode. And, we want all y'all to be there. We're going to try to communicate as much as possible. Luis will be sharing all the wine that he's drinking right now with all of us. So,
would love to. And it's going to be unleashed.
Yeah, it will not be unleashed.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah.
Oh, come on,
the
Joe.
200 episodes gotta be.
Gotta be unleashed.
It's a celebration. Doesn't mean we gotta scare everybody off, man.
Oh, what? They'll be attracted to it even more.
We have unleashed and we have like over the daggum cliff. You know, it's
yeah. For those that have never seen the over the cliff version, you'll have to come on one of our coach hunts to see that. That's a real treat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, show up at one of
definitely.
our hog camps, man. Oh, Charlie Newberry, man, he got a hat full, you know. So
Oh, didn't he though? Ooh-ha.
Yeah.
Charlie was just like,
A deer in the headlights. Whoa, man.
I didn't know these guys were like that.
you can't have thick skin when you're
Shout
around.
out to our brother Charlie,
Yeah.
Henrietta,
Oh,
Texas.
And
Super dude. He's just a super dude.
And to his credit,
Super guy.
he's coming back. So either the food was good or we didn't offend him too bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Chad, why don't you lead us off on our top listening city, brother?
Okay, this will be a treat. This top listening city is home to the largest man-made urban forest and the largest landlocked city in the world. The financial capital of South Africa. Yes, that's right. The top listening city is coming to you from South Africa. The city has over 10 million trees.
I know that's a different country, just so in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
One of my favorite.
Sorry,
places.
Chav. I'm sorry to interrupt. We just wanted to clarify for Manano there.
It's quite all right. The city has over 10 million trees and is also called the City of Gold due to its proximity to the abundant gold mining fields. Its infrastructure matches leading world cities, but the cost of living is far lower. And this is in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Johannesburg.
Wow. Joburg, they call it in South Africa. That's a pretty cool spot, man.
Man, we had to give it, man. South daggum Africa, man.
That's crazy.
That's one continent we normally don't get top listening city from.
Okay. And I'm going to pop the bubble, man, because not only did we get one top listening city from South Africa in this shot, we got two. We got two in there. And and guys, the listens, I look at that, the listens were, you know, they topped Denver, who's usually our top listening city all the time, man.
Man, you guys send us your name. We'd love to give y'all a shout out. Who's giving us listens out of Joburg, man. I've spent a lot of time down there between Johannesburg and Cape Town in the oil field. So
here we go.
Really cool
Here we
spot.
go.
Oh, yeah. He's even been there.
I have, dude. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, man, for sure. The Cape Town's gorgeous. We flew into Joburg and went to Cape Town from there, but the place is just, man, I tell people all the time, it ain't Africa. It's not, because I've been to the West Coast and the East Coast, and South Africa ain't Africa. But at the end of the day, it's beautiful, man.
And it's so cool because I get a visual like graph that shows the world, and it shows the number of listens in this large purple circle, cool. And generally all of those are there in the US and a bunch of them up in Canada. And you have to have so many listeners before it ever shows up there. And I was looking at the graph, and I saw these two big circles over there at the tip of Africa, man. I was like, what the heck, man? Yeah, that was just too
crazy.
Cool.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Manano, you're up next, brother.
Yeah, no.
I am. But I just wanted to see how Luis pronounced Johannesburg.
How do you pronounce it?
You want to see it or you want to hear it? Because I can show you if you want to see it.
Yeah, I said I want to see it because I want to see you, brother.
If you want to see it, I just did it. Yeah.
Okay. Up next.
I still like his capabilities. I hear that every time, man, and I just love it. Man. Like capabilities.
Okay, yo.
You guys are bullies, man.
This shipping and refining center is recognized as Tree City by the Arbor Day Foundation for its abundance of 3 and 11 parks. If you're trying to figure out where we are, The city is 3 miles north of the Oklahoma border at the confluence of the Walnut and Arkansas River. And it was previously named Walnut and Adelphi before settling on its present name. Any idea where we are?
Any ideas out there? You guys, come on. What are you saying?
It's pretty easy, this one, Joe. Even Banano can figure out. This is Arkansas City.
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
Arkansas City,
Kansas.
Man, you're so wrong, Joe. You gave him trees and threes, like left and right.
Yo, that's
the listeners
right,
can't figure out what we're talking about here. Are we talking about numbers or trees or what? I mean, is this
between Joe? This time, I think it was Joe because all the time is when I see beaches, I know it's yeah, like white sand, pristine waters. Tons of beaches.
I
know
think one
that's
time on one of the cities, they don't have a single beach, and I created like 6 of them and put them in there.
Gave him a whole shoreline.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, I thought you handled it awesome, Manano. I understood.
Yeah, you're only gonna have to speed it like 5 times to get normal speed there.
No,
but it's all
Manano,
good.
it was brother.
It doesn't matter.
You nailed it, Manano. You nailed it.
Sure.
Arkansas City.
Yeah, good job, Manano.
Man, I never heard of
Wait for
Arkansas.
my response for the next podcast because we're gonna be on leash.
I had never heard of Arkansas. I'd never heard of Arkansas City, Kansas. But one of my ball players, Paige Scanlon, just committed to Cowley College, and they are in Arkansas City, Kansas. It's a junior college in Arkansas City, Kansas.
But you haven't slept or eaten there yet, right?
Haven't, no, but I'll have to go by there and check Paige out playing this year. Shout out to Paige. We're proud of you, kiddo, for committing to go play softball at Cowley College in Arkansas City, Kansas.
All right.
Yeah.
Arkansas City, Kansas is like saying Texas City, Oklahoma, or something like that.
Yeah,
It's kind
exactly.
of weird.
Or Denver City, Kansas. Denver City, Texas.
Yeah, Denver City. Up next, this next city is located in a subtropical woodland and is known for its coal mining industry. It's known far and wide for its world-class big game hunting and fishing. Do we have your attention yet? Home to Denali Nature Preserve, the Miracle National Park, and spectacular Mokolo Dam. Because of the overall lack of water, it's home to Matimba and the world's largest direct cooling power station in Lefalale, Limpopo, South Africa.
Limpopo, man.
South Africa.
I hear.
Glad Joe gave that to me because I butchered it pretty good, but I'm telling you, man.
Dude, I was like,
Lefalale, Limpopo.
if anybody's been there and could pronounce this enough to
Yeah.
Marakele National Park.
Limpopo, so.
Mokolo Dam. Wow,
Yeah.
that's Matimba. Limpopo.
Matimba.
Man, again, back to big game hunting. I've heard a lot of good things about Limpopo. So,
Oh man, the concession's beautiful there, man.
dream of mine for sure to go there to Africa.
Me and you
hunt or
both, brother.
sometime. That's right, man. We got to do it.
We're gonna do it.
Next
What do you
up.
say next.
Yeah, we got placed right alongside Cohansey River and originally home to the indigenous Lenni Lenape, which means regular people. Bridgetown is known for its rich history with a historical district covering a quarter of the city. Want a great evening there? Then start it out with dinner at Vito's restaurant, followed by dessert at Terry's Custard, and finish the night out with some visual 17th century history and drinks at Potter's Tavern, and none other than Bridgetown, New Jersey.
Bridgeton, New Jersey. How you doing?
Bridgeton, not Bridgetown.
Yeah, I showed my redneck spell in there too because he said it exactly right. Followed by the desert at Terry's Custard instead of dessert.
Dessert.
Yeah, that should be dessert.
It's a desert. All right.
Go to
Desert
Vito's
at Terry's
dinner, you
Custard.
go to Terry's for dessert.
It's just a very sweet desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With all
There
that
you go.
custard in the desert.
What's up next?
Well, our main content, Joe, we want to give a special thanks to our ElkBros grinder and listener, to Mr. Richard O'Neill from Cali tonight. Our topic was inspired by an email from Mr. Richard. So, the topic tonight is elk response scenario mistakes, misreads, and what to do when that happens. And we've all been there, Joe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of want to talk about our mistakes and that we've made in dealing with the responses, how folks can either misread the situation or the response and make mistakes on the approach and really calling as well or they do both. They have mistakes with calling and reading the situation, and a lot of it has to do with not understanding what the elk are saying. Right. So, I mean, we're going to dive right into some of Mr. Richard's scenarios tonight and then we'll probably probably move into some of our own. Cause I mean, when we talked about this earlier, we got so many scenarios that we can talk about just from the last couple of years. I mean, I can dive into 14 years and pretty well call them down, but man, we'd be here for another 2 or 3 podcasts. So we'll start with some of Mr. Richard's, and the boys know which one's going to start off. So Louise, you'll start us off on number 2 there with Mr. Richard's scenario.
Mr. Richard says 7:30 a.m. in hiked in about 2 miles from the nearest road and camped out on a small flat shelf high up. Heard bulls all night long around us. Woke early in the next morning to hunt through a location bugle from our bivvy and instantly got a response 200 yards from us in what appeared to be a small open feeding area at the edge of an aspen grove. Again, we moved in quickly, got the wind advantage, threw out another bugle, and bam, there he was 70 yards in front of us, but covered by trees. I quickly but quietly moved into our pre-planned L ambush shooter position, and my wife bugled. This time raked some trees, and again the bull went silent and grabbed his cows, then walked out of my life.
Yeah. So
walking to
no, that's just the second part of it there. But so what I want to do is just give a little bit, because this is so cool. I got the email from Richard, and there's actually a scenario before this. The cool part is that Richard was getting into elk with his wife, with his hunting partner. They were getting into elk. He's done a lot of stuff to get himself ready to locate elk, and which he was doing. The problem was, once he got responses, how he was then, the choice that he was making after he got that response, where he would end up with an elk either shutting up completely, which everybody has dealt with, or end up, moving in and never getting another response, different things that happen to him, or move in on something and get busted by one, right? There's those types of things. So I think this is a great thing to start with on his here, that, breaking this down. Look, it's 7:30 a.m. They heard elk all night. That drives you crazy, man. It just gets you pumped, all night long. He gets out and he gets a response from a bull 200 yards away. He goes ahead and moves in, gets the wind right. Now, for us and everybody that's listening to this, each one of us have got a perspective of hearing an animal at 200 yards and what that looks like. Some of you in northern Idaho might be that you got thick trees and it, you have no idea, you're going to move in close on this animal. Some of you might be in the upper part of Colorado where it's real open. You got a lot of parks, you got some aspen. You could be like us in New Mexico, where we hear it and we got a bunch of oak brush and broken pine. All of us are going to see this a little differently, okay, when we do that. But he gets a response from this bull at 200 yards, and then he moves in, gets everything, sets up, gives another bugle, and then the bull answers at 70 yards, okay? Now, this is how he responds to this. Take a look at what he says now. And then what do you guys think? Because now he says the bull went silent, grabbed his cows, and then walked out of the life. Now, I don't know if he saw the bull grab the cows or what happened there.
Yeah, but his wife bugled. His wife bugled again after they got set up. And he already had eyes on him at 70 yards, right? and they bugle. Well, if he's got cows with him, it's over. He's leaving.
How do you-
Or
Yeah.
he's going to challenge. One or the two, right?
Yeah.
And he would have never had to challenge had he introduced a cow or a calf.
Exactly.
Or not even said a word and seen what that bull was doing with his cows in there, right? And if they would have just thrown out one lost cow call or anything, see what his pulse was there. But I don't. At 70 yards, I'm trying to figure out a way to slip an arrow in this guy.
Well, and to your point, Beto, I mean, we always talk about not talking directly to the bull,
Yeah.
and just kind of making your own deal to where you have your own cows, you have your own scenario, and then trigger the curiosity on the bull to come in and check you out versus challenging the bull directly. You know, in my opinion, short experience, I think that bull figured, hey, there's a potential challenge here. We don't know how strong that bugle was.
Yeah.
Let's just get out of here. Let me gather my stuff and move out of the way and keep my cows.
And if he was hearing bulls all around him all night, Joe, why we start off with a location bugle? Why don't we start off with a little cow call? Something soft around him.
I don't question that as much. I think. So if he was hearing the bulls, it kind of depends. Like if he got out of the bivvy and the bulls were still bugling already, or they were sounding off on their own, I'm moving in without saying a word, right?
Yeah.
But if there's nothing
There
that
you
is
go.
sounding off and he's
Yeah.
trying to like, okay, now where are they? I have no problem with a location bugle. It's non-threatening. It throws it out there.
I
Then
don't
you
know.
can answer it from a
Just
distance.
being another bull in the area can be threatening.
Sure.
I'm going.
Yeah, but I think the
I'm going
damage.
cow first.
But I don't think that caused the damage though. The
No, I don't.
damage seemed to have happened after
The bull was in
bugle
at
when they
70
were.
yards.
Yeah, because he gets a bull that responds from 200 yards. And now here's what I want to do before I even go any further, because look, I had to ask him. I sent it out there. Most people, when they think about scenarios, they
Yeah.
don't consider things like time of year, time of season,
Yep.
time of day, because you've got to think about all of that stuff when you're dealing with a bull. Because if this was September 1st, I might be handling it a little bit differently than I did when I heard that response than
Absolutely.
handling it back here
September
in
25th.
September 25th or so, right
Yeah.
around there, right?
Yeah.
Because early on, we've got young bulls that are gathering cows. We got big bulls that are staying off. It's a whole different situation than have to assume, when we hear, those bulls that were going off that night, that's rut action. If you're hearing multiple bulls going off, there's a hot cow in the area, right? So that means the bulls most likely have to assume are cowed up. You have to assume that. In Colorado, when we were there, think about that, man. Even the young guys had one or two, right? That they didn't want to lose, right? So think about that. Now, when they were 70 yards out, I totally agree with you, man, that at that point in time, I'm probably doing something to try to either pull that bull over to me, either thinking that there's a hot cow in that area, like Luis is doing our own thing,
Mhm.
or I'm going to experiment with a lost calf, see what he sounds off there,
Perfect.
maybe try to get the cows to commit to come over.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the problem, y'all. Whenever you bring cows to you, you have to understand the bull's going to be lagging behind. So that means you're going to be dealing with eyes and critters coming to you first into your area before that bull does, right? You might get lucky and have that bull pull off because that bull hears a calf and thinks that there's a cow in the area as well and pull off of it. But you got to think about all of these things when you do that, all right? But I totally agree with you. I think once, even at the 200-yard mark, if that bull responds at the 200-yard mark, I might be experimenting at that point.
Yeah.
Out even moving into him there. But he got in and he saw him in front at 70 yards. Now, there's a lot of things. Like I've heard Gil say you can watch and see if you can make a play. I've heard Luis say that you could use a calf call better than that bull because, again, You were dead on, Gil. Once I give a bull bugle at that close,
Dude,
it's either
it's
put up or
threatening.
shut up for that bull at
Yeah.
that distance. Okay.
Yeah, man, he's wanting to see something too at that distance. I mean, maybe the trees are covering you, but and covering him. But man, when you're in that tight, 70 yards, and he hears somebody bugle, oh man, it's fight or flight for him. And if he's not going to stand there and fight, he's going to hit that little roundup bugle, and here they go.
Yeah.
They're going to run right out of your life, brother. And then you're up his six the rest of the way, trying to figure how to get him back, and that's not an easy trick, not an easy chore if he's going up and you're down below. They don't have a problem doing that, man. They can put the distance between you and them really quick. But like Joe said, man, if you can get his cows interested in you, that's a total different ball game.
Yeah.
And if you could sound like a hot cow down there that's not coming to the party, I mean, that may make him interested if he doesn't have a hot cow. If he's got a hot cow, he ain't leaving her. He's actually going to push her. So
Well, the
that
other
other
thing
bull
is,
can't get after
you
her.
don't always have to introduce a bull with a bugle.
No doubt. Yeah, it could be
He said that his wife did some raking. The raking
Glunk.
without the bugle might have
Yes.
been enough,
Definitely.
right?
Even a glunk,
Yeah. Or the
After-
type of bugle that you use. You might have used, instead of just using a, because
Challenging bugle, just a mild.
you might have
Yeah, just a
demonstrated
mile
to those
roundup.
cows. You might have
But even like a
demonstrated
bow
to those
call,
cows.
a
You
bull mew, or even a weak chuckle.
That scenario, Joe.
What's that?
You want me to go to the next part of that sscenario?
Yeah, let's go to the next part of it.
Good
So
question.
he says, walking to track and locate after that event, right? They later in the dark timber on a bench picked up a small herd up again about a half a mile away, and they accidentally bumped them and watched them crash through the trees like a out of control freight train. Did some lost cow calls in an attempt to stop them, to no avail. I mean, damage is done once you jump them like that. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. I don't think there's something that will stop him, especially when they all spoke. It seems like they all saw them.
Yeah. No, and you're right, man. Once you blow it, now there's a couple of things that can happen there, depending on how thick the area is. We've had it where, and look, if it's the cows, man, so many times, sometimes those cows, when they do that and they blow out of there is still a chance because a bull just follows. Man, if you do something like, if you do like a bark chuckle, or, something that is just going to get his attention, or do something where, you do a bark over there on the side, maybe you start doing some cow calls there, you might have an opportunity to slow the bull down, if you give him something else. But those cows are not going to, once they see you and spot you, they're blowing out. Now, they might just go over the ridge if it's thick, and just sit over there till everything calms down. You might have another opportunity that way. But I wouldn't really try to, if the bull has spotted you and he's running and everything's going like a freight train, I'm not even going to cow call at him at that point in time, because I'm just kind of now educating them a little bit.
Educating them, yeah.
Yeah, at that point. But yeah. And he said he did some lost cow calls in an attempt to stop them, to no avail. Yeah, it wasn't going to happen, man. They had already had you, and they're heading out of Dodge.
That's right.
So what about anybody else here? Can anybody think of a scenario that you've had that you just didn't play the response right and learn something from it?
Well, I can remember a couple of times this happened to us. We walked to the edge of a ravine, and it wasn't very deep, but it was about 50 yards wide. And I remember you using some cow calls, and a 6x6 came out of the bushes, and he came to the edge of the ravine on the other side. But we were in a position where we just kind of ducked and waited. And he looked around, did see that we weren't in that area, and then walked back away from us. And then he called again, and he came right back to that same spot. and surveyed the area and no, didn't see anything, walked back away, and he did it 3 times. And I think what we learned from that was, after he walked away, run across that ravine and get to that spot,
Move
and
up.
he would have come right back. And that happened to us twice that I can remember.
Yeah.
And that's a lesson that some people don't realize, that when you do call and you get a response, but if you're not in a good position, and again, going back to calling in front of you instead of behind you makes a big difference too. So that was a
What do
lesson
you mean by that,
learned.
Chav? If
We
you
learned
call
that.
in front of you, how does that make a big difference than calling behind you?
Okay, well, he kind of pinpoints where you're supposed to be at.
Mhm.
And when he came out of the bushes and looked and surveyed the area, well, he didn't see anything because we were ducked down. If we would have called behind us, maybe he would have come across that ravine, but he wasn't going to go anywhere. And that's happened to us twice that I can remember, in the past. And
Yeah, there
that was
were a few lessons out of that, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and one of them is elk want to confirm visually, so even like the situation that we just talked about with you in there, Richard, if you would have used a decoy possibly in there,
Hmm.
there might have been a whole different play on that. And a lot of us don't think about that, and we should, because elk are so visual, man, that a
Yep.
decoy can actually change the whole situation. But Chad brings up a big thing that I always want people to learn and to listen to, is that how an elk approaches when they come to an area, they've actually already checked that and they feel safe in that approach. So generally,
Right.
when they go, they're going to go back the same way. Or if
They
you
came.
shoot an animal, they're generally going to turn and go back the same way that
same way
they
they
just
came.
came from. You know,
Mhm.
they almost always do that. So if you have a bull that does come into you, responds and comes in and hangs up because you're pegged, basically you can't do anything because he would see you or peg you, and then he gets bored and turns and walks away, get your shooter to move up
Up.
so
Yeah.
that you are at within effective shooting range of that last place that they showed up, and then throw those calls back behind you to pull that bull again. Now it's got to be, when that person moves up, they got to get up there quick and they got to get up there silent, man, because you're going to make them think that, hey, we're back here. And you can make noise with footfalls, breaking sticks, doing
Yep.
some cow calls, make them think that, oh, they're back over in that area. They will come back into that same direction where they just came from. So there's a couple of lessons there about them being visual, about understand how they're going to use the area back and forth like that, and how, sometimes you get caught in a bad position where they should see something that they don't. And that just happens sometimes. It's just an oh crap moment. If you had the better choice and you could set up, you want to set up where that stop and scan, what we call a stop and scan spot, that location that they're going to be able to come through, that they should see the animal that's calling them. That's what we call the stop and scan. If you can be in position to where those stop and scan locations are, you're putting yourself in a better position to be able to kill that animal. Okay.
Yep.
But I just want to throw this out before we get going too far on this, is that there are common mistakes that I see people make all the time, when it comes to elk and these situations. One is that we're just not really we're not really sure where to set up, or we'll start approaching an animal when we should be setting up, or we will set up when we should approach an animal. It's like it's a tough dance to figure out for some people, right? They're not sure, should I move in on that animal, and we're going to go over a scenario here in a minute where it's going to kind of prove that. But finding that position is a dance. And what I try to tell people is this: that dance depends a lot on terrain and how thick it is, right? The thicker the vegetation is, the more room
tighter
you
it
have to move up on
Yeah.
animals and to set up. And if you have two people with you, Man, it's just that the shooter is going to determine the setup at that point. You know, that caller can just stay and that shooter move up, and the caller just wants to be able to see the shooter, not see the elk. You know, it's okay if that person gets in position back here and doesn't see an elk coming in on them. That's not their job. They can see their shooter, and they can tell if their shooter's seeing the elk, and then they can read off of that. But you know, you read that shooter's going to go up and get that position. If that means that they have to sneak up there and then you're going to make noise back here, well, it still works for you, man. But that shooter does not want to make a call if that caller's back behind him, because now they change the location of where that elk is, and you've just eliminated anything that your caller can do for you. All right, back there. But that's what I see is, if it's an open area, it can still happen with two people. It's tougher solo, but with two people, that caller can move up, especially if it's something where you've got a little hill down, there's any kind of screen, you can get in position and then let your caller pull that bull by you. But you have to be careful, because if you have made a sound and it's more open and now you try to move up, that elk is standing somewhere with those ears up like this, looking.
Yeah.
And looking for movement. And if you are within 100 yards, you're within 70 yards, and you've made a peep, and now you're trying to sneak in, and they see that, that's a predator moving in on them, and they ain't going to say a word. They're going to turn.
Yeah.
They're going to go out. Okay?
Yeah, I think Joe, that answered the next question, if I may.
Yeah,
it
go
says
ahead.
early.
Grinders tuning in, thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Podcast. Our goal is to share our knowledge and help you flatten that learning curve so that you too can have some of the very same incredible experiences that have given all of us here at ElkBros a lifetime of memories. If you like what you hear or see, you can get all of this information plus so much more from our Base Camp Elk Hunting Training Camp, the first in a series of online courses from our Blue Collar Elk Academy. Our Base Camp Training Camp allows me to use my coaching style and share almost 40 years of elk hunting experiences successfully hunting elk on public lands, as well as over 20 years guiding hunters of all ages and experience levels. This course will be like nothing you have ever experienced in concept and structure, using success-based coaching techniques that will elevate your confidence and skill sets. Our camp will prepare you specifically from that final moment most in your control, those final minutes or seconds the elk is in front of you, backwards through each step and level, allowing you to see, visualize, understand, and relate every coaching point to what lies ahead, the next step, the next thought process, the next success. Because y'all, you've already been there. You know what it looks like. By tapping my 30 years of teaching and coaching experience, our camps are developed considering multiple learning modes with text, visuals, audio, as well as video. And Base Camp will benefit those new to elk hunting all the way to the 10 to 15 year vet. So if you are looking for that one thing to help you fill that tag this year, invest in the most important piece of equipment there is, you and your elk hunting knowledge. You can find the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy and the Base Camp Training Camp at ElkBros.com. That's ElkBros.com. Keep dreaming of the screaming, believing in achieving, and most of all, keep grinding.
Just after sunrise, timber forest with deadfall. Threw some cow call from my beautiful tube and got cut off with an instant response from what it sounded like a very immature bull, 50 yards away in the trees. Moved in quite quietly, but never heard or saw him again.
Oh, yeah.
So you just described that perfect scenario. He was in, I think he was in that bubble.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the bull saw him, or even he was just waiting for that movement.
Yeah.
He saw him.
Yeah. And
50 yards away in a really, kind of an open area, it's just nothing. They can catch any movement pretty fast.
So what are some things that he could have done there? Because you're exactly right, Manano, man. You know, they've made a call. Look, I had the same thing happen with two of my buddies. You know, we were supposed to be in two different areas. And I was in one location, they were supposed to be in another one. I get up and I get a bull responding, and it's a little bit on the open. So I'm actually throwing calls behind me. I'm getting the bull worked up. He's in a wallow. He's doing all this stuff. Well, the other two guys hear this activity, and so they start moving into the setup. That wasn't as bad as the fact that as they were moving into the setup, they were cow calling. As they were approaching, they were cow calling. They announced that there were cows coming in, and what do you think that bull did?
Yeah.
He's looking for those cows coming to him, and he catches them sneaking in there, and it's a done deal, right? So, but what could they have done differently instead of him moving up to try to get into that?
Just wait for if the bull was within 50 yards away. Yep. I mean, and he got cut off. I would have
coming.
Yeah, I would have wait at least 10 minutes. Just to see, pay attention to the wind, pay attention to any movement, and hear the woods. That's it. And get in a position that allows me to draw.
Right.
I probably would have took my bugle tube after a couple of minutes and I don't hear anything from him, Joe. I probably would have took my bugle tube behind me and probably softly cow called behind me. Maybe even a little chuckle. Just a real
simulating as if you were going away.
Yeah, but I want everything behind me. I don't want to project any sound towards him at all because I'm in tight already. But me, if I'm in 50 yards, I'm trying to find him. I'm trying to see his feet moving in the brush.
Trying to find him, but you're trying to find him.
Exactly. My eyes, using my eyes, trying to find him with whether I'm using my range finder, trying to look through the brush, whatever it may be, I'm trying to put eyes on him. 50 yards is tight, man. I mean, something's, he's got to move some way, shape, or form to get out of there around you. So 9 times out of 10, I'm not saying a whole lot when I'm 50 yards inside him, right? I'm probably not going to say a whole lot. I'm like Manano. I'm probably waiting, seeing what he's going to do. Is he coming? Is he not coming? I mean, I'm listening for branches to break, him kicking a log, him moving his antlers, I mean, there were a couple other things you probably could have done, like rake an antler or something.
That's right. I have seen bulls just staring to looking for something 2 or 3 or even 4 minutes without any movement. Just
think about the bull you and I had a standoff with, Joe. How many minutes do we have a standoff with that bull?
Yeah, no, yeah, it
8 minutes.
8 minutes, but
8 minutes, bro. He stood there looking for something.
Well, Manano hit it right off, man. I mean, the guy, there's no need. He replied, immediately cut off to a cow call. There's no need to introduce a bull anywhere because it's an immature bull. There's no need to introduce a bull. And if he cuts you off immediately, that bull's coming. There's no reason at that point. At that point, you're dropping down. You're looking for shooting lanes. You're checking area around you,
checking your wind.
Yeah, you're making sure.
The wind's what can screw you quickly.
Well,
the wind can
you want to
kill
know where
you.
that scent line is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
The wind can screw you so fast, man. Yeah. Like you think the bull's coming and then he just shuts up. Yeah, one look, you hit your puffer and it's going to him. King's X.
He got you.
Gone. Yeah, he got you. It's time to move on, baby.
At 50 yards, Richard, man, once that bull sounded off, you had the fish on the line, man. All you had to do was drop down. If your wife was with you and it's really, really thick, and let's say you did drop down and you didn't see anything for a while. Well, Manano's right. Sometimes, especially a younger bull, they're just going to keep listening, man, because they don't want to
Yeah.
get themselves in a bad position. And if it
Mhm.
was a really thick area and the terrain allowed it, you could have just had your wife start moving back and doing cow
Calling.
calls moving away. And I
Yes.
guarantee you that booger would have followed up in the vapor trail right there.
Yeah.
So,
Within 50 yards, I think it's time to turn the GoPro on.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Look,
Yeah.
I'll harken back to something that happened to me and Chav on a fence line where we had 6, 7 bulls within 12 feet of us, man. And every time they'd get nervous, they'd smell a little something funky or something like that, man. I think Chav had some bad feed odor or something like that. I don't know, but they'd smell a little something funky. They'd get nervous, and the whole pack of them would want to leave. Well, as soon as they do that, I'd move my bugle tube behind me and just lightly chuckle. Man, dude, they'd all look and we're like, hey, man, what was that? And then I'd lightly cow call. And I mean, they're less than 30 yards from me, 40 yards, but they're all fixing to leave. They were fixing to bug out. They didn't like what was going on. How many times did we call them bulls back, Chav?
Oh gosh, at least half a dozen.
Yeah, and they're all
Maybe more.
immature bulls. There weren't no
Mhm.
giant bulls in there. Couple big fives, and then there were some raghorn bulls that we knew that if we could just get them to commit, we got them. But again, man, it's about reading their body language, and if you can't put eyes on that bull, it's hard to do that. It's hard. So sometimes, man, the softer stuff. Again, man, don't call to the bull. Call away from yourselves, and
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
either call or move away from you while that's going on.
Hey,
Right.
RC, man, can you recall any scenarios for you that, things just ended up happening that left you scratching your head?
Yeah, I could go on all night.
Yeah, I mean, all of us could.
Yeah. There's several, Joe, that you call and you go, okay, this is it. It's gonna work. And all of a sudden it's like, well, it didn't work. Why? And so you're scratching your head wondering why it didn't work. In the same way as that 50 yards. I mean, man, I just feel like you needed to have some patience. I mean,
Yeah.
just lots of patience and observe and everything else. And then, like you said, if his wife was with him, I wouldn't even have her call. I would have just had her walk away and kick the tree or kick, a rock or something and make the sound like you're leaving. And but yeah, I mean,
Knox, you called a giant bull in for me way up on the side of a mountain one time. And how long did we have a stare off with that bull? How long did he stand there looking at us? That was how far was he? Maybe 15, 18 yards out of them jack pines, and he's standing there staring at us. But how long did we have that stare off?
yeah, it was,
You remember?
See, I mean, seemed like forever.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it was just,
RC's looking at me from behind, and I'm looking back at him, and he's like, and I'm on my knees, man, and he's looking at me. Do you see him? I'm like, no, but I mean, you could hear his guttural growl in front of us. I mean, we knew he was up there, and RC's like, why don't he steps to my left and looks over there. He don't see nothing,
yeah,
man.
okay. I was trying to think which bull that was. Yeah. That's the one that I was on my hands and knees and I crawled out real slow and looked around the corner and he's looking at me like, oh, there you are.
Yeah. Again, man,
Yeah.
they shut up and try to find you. And this was a big bull, had a bunch of cows with him, and RC managed to pull him off in a latch ditch effort. We were up there all day and he's like, I said, man, just hit that hyper call one more time. And he did, and that bull erupted off the side of that mountain. And here he came. RC said, are you ready? I said, I'm born ready, man. Absolutely. And then it was like, he come in there about 50, 60 yards and bugled, 25, 30 yards and bugled, felt like he was sitting in our lap, and then nothing. And Part of this is my fault because I set up behind the jack pines instead of got in front of the jack pines.
Yeah.
If I get in front of those jack pines, I shoot that bull, I arrow him walking in there at 20 yards, man, because it's a real narrow little corridor that we were in right there with an aspen forest on our left side and a bunch of jack pines on our right. I know I messed the setup up. RC did everything he was supposed to. I just didn't move to the front of the setup. So never could call that a bad thing on RC. That was just my inexperience of understanding to get to the front of that cover, right? Instead of keeping the cover in front of me, I kept instead of me getting in front of the cover, I kept the cover in front of me, and that hid the bull. And so when RC stepped around to look up, the bull's looking at him at 15 yards. And I mean, big giant bull, you know, and when the bull runs off, I mean, all hell breaks loose. RC looks at me and he goes, I don't even want to talk about this. He said, I'm sick. I'm like, what's up? And he goes, the bull was right freaking there. I'm like, no way. He goes, I'm telling you, how could you not see him? I said, I did not see him. But goes back again when Joe called that bull in for me to 38, 40 yards. That bull stared us down for 8 minutes and didn't do a thing but try to figure the scenario out, right? I think 100% we've got to use a lot more patience in our calling setup, right?
And I'll tell you though, sometimes though, it's just a total misread. We actually think, and I'm going to give you the most common thing that I see happen to just about everybody out there that's elk hunting, is that you get out there and you get a response. This bull is responding to you because you give location bugle and he sounds like "Wah!" when he does it. And you're thinking, oh man, he's engaged with me. And so you kind of, and he's not that far away. He might be 100 yards. And so what do? You do a setup and you're waiting and you're waiting. And then, you know, you're like, okay, well, I'm not sure where he's at. So again, the patience thing, but you end up giving a call and now he bugles and he's 300 yards away. So now you end up running to cut the distance. You're coming in, you get up there, you go ahead and you give another bugle out, and that bull, he gives this real short scream like that, and you're like, man, he's engaged with me again. So what do? You set up, you're waiting, you don't hear nothing, you give a bugle, and now he's another 300, 400 yards away. And the misread is that we think that bull is talking to us, and that bull's not. He's actually doing either a roundup bugle or he's displaying for his cows, letting them know where he's at, saying that don't pay attention to that bull. He's talking to his cows. He's not talking to you. And while he's standing there on the rear, because that's what he does, those elk are moving, those cows are moving up, going someplace else. He looks, they're gone, boom, he starts taking off. Now you give a bugle. What does he do? He responds, but he's just further, and it's because he's not really engaged with you. And you think that you're doing something wrong, or you think you're scaring him, and you're not. You're not, man. He is just following his cows to a destination. You always have to ask yourself, anytime during the period that you have something going on with an elk, is that animal at a destination or going to a destination? If it's at a destination, like if you're down in a park and you heard him coming down the hills and it comes inside there, that's a totally different deal because he's coming to where you're at, or he's at a destination. Right. You know, rather than if you were up high and they were bugling as they were coming down and you're in the chase basically on it and you don't realize that, you know. A lot of times we get in tight and we hear that bull do that. It's going to sound like this. You're just going to hear that, man. He's not talking to you. He's talking to his cows, man. And he could just be, or he gives that little roundup. Just like that.
Short.
Yep. Nice short one. He's rounding them up and he's moving them out, man, because you have just become a threat to him.
You'll know when he sends a bugle talking to you, it'll have so much passion in it. It'll have so much growl and because he's furious with you, man.
And it'll be a little longer when he does it.
It'll be a quite a bit longer, man, but it'll be, I mean, you'll just hear it, the inflection in his voice. He's actually talking to you. It's not that like Joe hit those 2 type roundup bugles. They're short. The other ones will be long, and then some of them will have they'll bark like that and then hit the bugle. When you hear something like that, it's on like Donkey Kong, buddy. I mean, you can bark and do it back to him, and you better get ready because that'll be the last sound that bull will hear. You know,
he's coming.
I mean, yeah, he's coming. When you hear him, I mean, dude, it will make your hair stand up. I promise you.
But that's the thing that I was saying is I really see that a lot of times people just misread what is going on, and they think that, you know, they're in a setup when they're not, you know. And if you have elk going to a destination and not at a destination, you have to realize that, and you have to always remember that that bull is back behind the cows. And if they're going to a destination, you had better get on the parallel, downwind, down thermal side of those boogers and try to get up ahead of that bull to where they're going, because now you're getting yourself up where the cows are and you're going to put yourself in better position. So that's something to think about there. All right.
Mm-hmm. Well, Richard had another interesting, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment. And he says the hour was about 8 a.m. and we got a response from the bull a couple of 100 yards into the trees at the top of the meadow. We cut the distance, and once we were an estimated 100 yards or less away, found what appeared to be the perfect area for a setup. We moved to a small clearing about 60 yards long with a wind advantage. I was the shooter, so I asked my buddy to fall back into the tree line and throw some cow calls, as the bugles are seeming to scare bulls off.
Good decision.
While I move into shooter position, I am unsure if he heard me or ignored me, because while standing in the wide open clearing, he sent a loud bugle from his tube. I looked ahead to see the silhouette of a nice sized bull stand and run away as my heart sank. Opportunity blown again. Well, I think the main lesson learned there was you need to talk about what your setup's going to be before you set up. You know, maybe the night before, and also coordinate some hand signals so you know exactly what I want. You know, go back there, you know, call.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't want to bugle from a clearing, man.
Yeah. Well, definitely. Definitely
You don't want to do it, man.
So,
get in the cover.
But I think if they have their signals set up.
Yeah.
Because if the bull is going to bed down, he's going to bed down just inside the trees right there, and he's going to have a good view of everything going on. You're standing out in the middle of the clearing and you bugle, it's like, you know, you're sending up a red flag on that. But
yeah. And man, look, get on the other side of that 60-yard clearing, man. Don't let that bull look into that clearing. Get up in there. You know, get up in there where he's got to hunt you down. He ain't seeing you in that clearing.
Well, you had two partners not on the same page there, and that
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So,
you know, Joe, I've got one scenario that I think all guys have seen this happen, and it happened to me in RC in Colorado. I'd already killed my bull, and I was calling for RC, and we knew we had some hunters around us and stuff like that. But when we got in there early one morning, and we kind of just sat around the bike and stuff like that, and did a couple of location bugles, nothing, man. We get a few cow calls, nothing. So we decided we'd start into the wind, and it was just about daybreak, right? And we get up in the gray light, and we get up to this area we know it's going to open up into an opening. And on the left-hand side of that opening, up on top of this ridge, there's 3 good bulls down there in this bottom, right? And we know that, you know, we got the wind okay. It's kind of a crosswind, right? So we don't want to push out to the right of them because that'll give them the wind. So if we can get down below them and get behind them, man, we got a shot. So, but when we look up, it's a big ridge top in front of us to get on top of to go around them. And there's like this ravine that's in between us, right? And I'm like, man, and they're not that far. They're a couple hundred yards, right? I'm like, well, here goes nothing. I pushed RC up to that ravine. Mistake number one. Okay. If there's a barrier between you and a ridge, you need to get on the other side of it. And I told RC when we made the setup, I said, I'm probably messing this up, but if I can call that bull down here and make him think there's a hot cow here and another bull, it's going to be okay. Well, RC pinned it right. He goes, unless he doesn't see elk, and that could be the whole thing. We should have crossed the ravine and went up the other side and got in the thick stuff and called those bulls to us. Instead, I get RC positioned right there by the ravine. I back off and start doing my thing. And sure enough, bulls did exactly what we thought they'd do. Bulls come right up to the top of that ridge. RC can see their feet walking up through there. They vacated being out in that park, and here they come. They just, and I see RC looking at me, and he's motioning me to go on away. So I just start taking off, calling. Well, they stop at the edge of that ridge, looking down in that ravine, and they don't see no elk, baby, right? And it was just, the setup was wrong. But I know everybody that's out there has done this, man. You give them an opportunity to get a stop and scan spot, and they don't see what they need to see.
Right.
They're like, not today, right? I hear what's going on, but we don't see what's going on. And they're so visual, and I screwed that up. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt I should have went across that deal and got up on top of that ridge and in the thick stuff, and those bulls would have come right to us.
The other thing that they do too, bro, is yeah, they're visual, but sometimes we call bulls in and we're getting them in close to us and they're within 20, 30 yards, and we're making, we have another caller back there, but we're not adding any other type of environmental noises, no foot stomps, no,
Oh no, I was breaking trees and breaking branches.
It sounds too quiet for what we're expressing, or
yeah,
we see the animal coming in and we just shut up totally and they're not hearing a thing, and it's like, why am I not hearing elk, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, things like that. So
I just, like I said, I messed that up. And I kind of figured that right when I was doing it too, and I know RC did. He's so gracious though. When you hunt with RC, I mean, he's teaching while he's hunting. He probably knew that it was the wrong way to set up, but he wanted to let me run everything and run that string out. And look, I mean, it wasn't 10 minutes later, we get another bull to answer us, and we call that bull in, and then some guys rode up our six that rode up the bull's six that they smelled him in. But look, man, I learned so much in that deal. I know that if we would have made that one little adjustment, is to get up on the ridge instead of falling and trying to call them down to us, it'd have been different,
Hey, Luis, man, do you have one?
I do. I'm going to try to make it quick because I know we're kind of running out of time here. We all know my calling career is not long, but I've already made enough mistakes to where I could probably, spend a whole podcast talking about mistakes that I've made. But, I can recall quickly a couple of them. One of them was actually when I was first starting to call. I don't know if you recall this opportunity, and Manano as well. The three of us, got a response from a bull up in the ridge, and Manano and I went up to kind of, try to gain ground with that bull. Manano was hunting, I was filming. Manano and I got up on the ridge, and Joe kind of got behind us, and Joe called in this bull, and I was kind of probably 50 yards back from where Manano was at, set up, and then this bull was coming on a string. Manano took a shot at it. A great shot. We later recovered that bull, but there was more bulls up there, and we wanted. I had already harvested, and we wanted Joe to get an opportunity next. So we did the old switcheroo, and at that point I was like, okay, man, I got to jump in and try to help out here and see if I can call in for Joe. And So Joe kind of went to the front, I went to the back, and in my mind, I knew there was a bull on the top of the ridge. We were all on the top of the ridge, but then I'm thinking, okay, I have to do my own scenario. I have to do my own thing. I'm a bull now. I've got cows with me. In my mind, I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna play scenario to where I'm actually going to move away from where the bull is at, as if I was a bull moving away, and then I'm gonna play as if a cow was kind of left behind, and then I also may try to make a calf, being left behind. This bull was kind of coming in towards that set, but the bull got close enough to where it hung up, and then when it hung up, it started barking. It was so early in my career that I had no understanding of what barking meant. So I kept on my scenario and I kept on moving my cows away. And then also the direction in which I was moving away, I couldn't really see exactly where Joe was at. So I was kind of moving it away in the wrong direction. The bull never fully came in. He hung up and then eventually left, and Joe never had an opportunity to shoot that bull. And then, we were super happy we were able to recover Manano's bull, but at the same time, there was a big lesson for me to kind of understand the meaning of the chuckle, right? So the bull was asking me to show myself, and I ignored that request, and I just kept playing my own scenario. And eventually the bull lost interest. He didn't feel like he was responded to. So I'm sure he thought, man, this is kind of a shady situation. If I would have in turn actually responded with a chuckle at the time, maybe the bull would have been like, okay,
like a
bark chuckle back, bark chuckle, that the bark is what I meant. Then that could have changed things, right? So at that point, I realized the importance of actually understanding the language and what they're saying and what they're requesting and how you respond to that. So that was a big lesson for me. I mean, I was so, and look, this took a while. I mean, I remember working and calling for a while there and trying hard. I so wanted to be able to call something in for Joe after he's done it so much for us, right? And so that was a hard lesson for me, and something that definitely triggered me kind of looking more into understanding the language of what these animals have.
To go back to Aubrey Strickland's question, though, about earlier, because we also realized that where that bull was hanging up, where he didn't want to come, was where Manano's bull was down on the ground, actually.
Yes.
So, it actually just kind of kept walking around Manano's bull, and I don't know if it was because, it was like, well, what's going on with you? You know what I mean? It was kind of weird. It wasn't like spooked. It was almost like getting up. It was a little
something ain't right.
Curious.
Yeah, something's not right here. So, yeah, the way that happened. But I think most people, most hunters, misread how the response that they get. They don't understand that the bull is either just talking to his cows, either rounding them up and moving them out, and they continue to bugle instead of maybe taking look, I always like to take a lover before a fighter approach anyway myself, especially that time of year, late in the season. You've got satellite bulls looking for cows. I'm absolutely at that time, man, I'm going to try to, go cow heavy first, even calf heavy, if you're worried about blowing out that lead cow like that. So you might want to change your strategy in that way, but I think that's most of it. And I think a lot of us, there's a lot of guys that hear a bull at 400 yards and they set up, instead of cutting the distance. Or then you have somebody that hears a bull at 100 yards and they respond like what they did here, and they feel like they have to get a response. And maybe that response was to a cow call, and now you bugle and introduce a bull when you don't have to. Right. Look, give them what they're responding to. Give them what they asked for. If you gave a location bugle and they responded to that, well, what kind of response was that? Give it some time, man. Is it coming a little closer? If it's within 200 yards, don't go charging in. Kind of check out what's going on from there at that point in time, right? So and then sometimes we're 100 yards, we get a response, and our response is to cut the distance when no, we're already in that bubble right there. You're risking something unless you're going to do a Mohican sneaking and you have eyes on them and you got a feeding bull in a park or something like that that's putting his head down, then yes, by all means, go in and do that. You don't have to now call and let them know that you're coming and put them on the alert, right?
Yeah,
So,
and pinpoint yourself to them.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And let me tell you, another common mistake is that partner hunters a lot of times turn themselves into solo hunters because they stay with each other all the time. They have the security thing instead of like, I have a bull responding. Well, shoot, man, let my shooter move up on that bull. Let me hang back and just kind of work in as I'm going, right? Does
Well,
that ring a bell with you?
that's a
Does ring a bell
perfect
with me.
segue to the other quick event I wanted to share. And this was in Colorado. Me and Manano were kind of on a top of a flat there for a while, and we were resting, and then I was testing different diaphragms, and I was kind of being loud testing different diaphragms that we thought, we weren't seeing much sign, so nothing's happening. And all of a sudden Manano was like, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." I was like, he's like, "Call again, keep calling." And so I kept calling, and all of a sudden, yes, definitely heard a response. So we actually got set up, and Manano got into the tree line, where it was thick, and then I kind of stayed at the top of that, flat mountaintop, and there was actually a blowdown. There was a blowdown tree with the big roots were out. And so I was kind of in the hole of where that tree, snapped out of the ground, covered by the roots of the tree. And I was calling from there. And this bull was actually coming, like trotting towards Manano, coming towards us. It was a perfect situation, but the bull hung up relatively close. I don't know, Manano, how close was that bull?
I would say 45
yards.
Yeah.
And he just stood there for a while, kind of assessing the situation. And I really didn't have a way to actually move further back and continue to call. And, I kind of kept on soft calling at that point as if it was just cows. And I just lost patience. And I thought the bull was gone. And so as soon as I came out of that hole in the ground to kind of try to see if I could see anything, sure enough, that bull saw me because he was on the side of the top of that ridge, and he was able to skyline me. And when that bull saw me, he just turned around and just took off running. Manano was super close to actually, being able to draw and shoot that bull. And so my lack of patience there in that situation actually was the lesson for me. Sometimes and that's the difficulty of, sometimes not being able to see what your partner's seeing, and just kind of having to be patient to kind of wait and see how things play out and continue to call and just kind of in your head assess the situation even when you can't see.
Yeah. And a good thing to do there too is maybe even periscope. Like if you're on a ridge like that, try to be in an area where, that at least there's tall trees or something back behind you where you're approaching it so that it kind of screens you a little bit, and just slowly periscope your eyes over the top of the ridge and try to catch, what's going on. If you get that itching thing to do it, just don't go up on the ridge and skyline yourself, because that'll,
sometimes the topography won't allow you to do that.
Yeah. Right.
But and that's where you really have to be patient.
Yeah.
And I think if there's one thing that we've learned tonight in a lot of these situations is patience is the key. right? I mean, there's a lot of scenarios that
Patience and understanding the
their
response that you're
language,
getting.
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Understand. For me, the game changed for me when I understood what elk were saying. I knew when to pursue, when to not, when to go to bull sounds, when to go to cow sound, because I know what they're saying. You know,
Right.
that's a big deal, man. And
Yeah,
there's
and
so
that's
many.
the summary of my two experiences, right? One is, okay, understand what they're asking or what they're saying, or how to respond to what they're saying, and two, be patient, right? I mean, and just like play the situation right based on what you're hearing from them, and just let it marinate.
And also always take in everything, ask yourself, what's the time of day? Are we going to a destination? Are they at a destination? You know, if it's first thing in the morning at daylight, and we've got good coolness and they're going to stay down there for a little bit, you might have a little bit of time in there, but as soon as they start to move off and go up, they're going, y'all, and you had better get after it. That's where the midday, if you can stay with that group and you can stay off on their side and you can parallel them, you might have a chance to get into them. But if you don't, once they get to where they're bedding, now you have a captured audience there. And now when they're captured, you get to choose the playing field for your setup, and you get to use some of the techniques or the scenarios that we talk about to try to pull them to you instead of directly engaging. And that's a whole different podcast there, and we've done it already. Just go on to look for podcasts on, engaging versus disengaged calling that we do. You can find that in our academy as well. Those types of things that help you. But most of the problem that people have with going up and dealing with the response is they don't understand the response, and they're not sure how hard they should move up. I'm very aggressive, but there's a point where you move in that you have to slow down, and you have to assess. It's kind of
Slow
like
down and hurry up.
yeah, and what it's kind of like, I was talking to one of our guys in the military, man, Bob, and I was telling him, like, when you come in, like Luis, when he was checking that area, you have to really assess your closest threats, those areas close to you, and then you move out to those other possible places that an animal could still be in a stop and scan when they come over. You want to assess close, your near threat to your far threat. So you want to look for that when you're doing that as you're moving, if you are moving in. But once you have a critter that they're in a destination and they're only 200 yards away, or you're even above where they could actually be moving to you, then you've got to play that smart, man. You look for those setups and you look for a way to bring them to you, right?
Yeah, and to that point, as far as the time of the day, last year as well, Nano and I were down on the on that area where you kill your bull, which I think that's the same bull that we were chasing that afternoon. He responded to us from the ridge across the valley from where we were at. And then, we were trying to figure out, are we going to really try to call this bull in, which is honestly what we were trying to do initially. The wind wasn't completely right, but then at the same time, we felt like he was moving away. And it's like, we got to close the gap because it's getting late, and he's probably going opposite direction to where we were at. So we got to the next ridge and realized that he was on the next ridge over. So it's like, man, this guy, I mean, there's no way we're going to catch them up, right? So, I mean, I think the time that we took to realize what that bull was going to do and not understanding where he was headed because we didn't really know the area well, we burned some good daylight in trying to close that gap and getting close to that bull as well.
Yeah.
Well,
I think one of the
go ahead.
I think one of the lessons that we should all learn is that there is going to be thousands and thousands of these things that happen, and you can't get discouraged. You just got to hold your head up and say, okay, well, what could I have done different? Or and take everything that, I mean, if you're going to be a true elk hunter, that's what you got to do. You got to think like an elk. The more you're out there, the more you'll start thinking like one and acting like one. ask Joe. He wallers in it and all kinds of stuff, So, but
Yeah.
it's in serious. You can't get down on yourself, especially if you go hunting and you had like 10 or 15 or 50 encounters and nothing happened. That's when you pick up a bow and you go elk hunting, just plan on it. That's it's one of those things,
Exactly. Good stuff, man. Well, on this last scenario, Joe, we talked about. It says here in the last scenario, we located 3 bulls about 10 a.m. with a location bugle from the bottom of the thick canyon. Once we found a route to the bottom, we threw out another bugle to hear that they'd moved in closer to us within a mile. The wind was not in our favor. However, it was slow enough that if we jogged, we could beat the wind in theory. Never. Once we got into position near one of the 3. Through another bugle from atop a large rock, we heard him move in, but due to the vegetation, never got a glimpse of him. He got so close, I actually drew my bow and held it because I thought he was going to walk out into a very small meadow we were set up in. He never spoke again and seemed to get bored and just walked away.
But I want everybody to pay attention to what it says, 10 a.m. So were they going to a destination or out of destination?
They were at it.
They were at it, right? So that's a perfect thing to get down into there. I don't, the fact that he got close, again, goes back to the point where now you had a bull so close to you, and he heard an elk in there, and he's looking for that elk,
Coming to find it.
but everything went silent.
Yeah.
Right? Everything goes silent. There's something wrong with this picture right here. So there needed to be some additional selling point because it's so thick. That elk can't see, can't confirm, is going to look for something, but he doesn't hear anything now to go to. The audio, their ears are the second thing that are going to take them someplace. Nose is going to be last. I think I thought it was interesting that they said that they were able to outrun the wind in there. That's pretty fortunate that happened. I think you had to get something in your favor, especially if it was 10 o'clock. The thermals probably started taking the scent up as well. That helped you out as well. Instead of it dropping down into that canyon, started to pick it up. But you got in the money, man. And Richard, if I can just say anything, man, I just want to say this. We're talking about all the, hindsight stuff. We're talking about possibility, what ifs. Each one of us could have been in every one of these situations and come out the same way. The cool thing is you're getting in these situations. So you are increasing your odds to be able to kill these critters, man. So I first of all, I just want to applaud you in doing that. Now you just got to work on recognizing what type of response you're getting it. Figure out how tight you can get on that animal due to the terrain, due to the vegetation, and then make the decision on what you're seeing, hearing, smelling, whatever, on how you're now going to bring that animal into your killing range. And if you have a partner, do not make yourself into a solo hunter. Let that partner bring that animal past you. Let them go away. You don't always have to move forward. You can let them go away, as far as that goes as well.
That's right. And one of the things that I saw that was kind of a reoccurring theme for him is that they're setting up in these meadows. And I just think you need to get out of the meadow, brother, and get into the thicker stuff, because when they approach a meadow, they're looking for elk, man. And if they can see out, and it doesn't matter if it's 80 yards across, 40 yards across, 60 yards across, when those critters approach an area, they can see into that area, and they should see some elk activity, and they're not seeing it. It's bothering them, right? So cut out of that meadow and get on the edge of where you heard him from. If the wind will allow you, get to that edge up there and calling to the edge of the meadow or inside the meadow 20, 30 yards, on the edge of that brush, and you're going to have a lot better time of seeing him, of getting him to commit in that area in there than to when he stops and scans in that meadow and he doesn't see anything.
Yeah, and if I could, to all of our listeners out there, man, I keep saying they're visual, they're visual,
Yeah.
they're visual. I would absolutely invest in an ultimate predator decoy.
Yep.
Have that on me. I mean, just stuck between my back and my pack. They're easy to get on your bow, and it's like Gilbert always says about a weapon. Sometimes it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And that's the way I feel
100%.
about that decoy, man. It's done things for us. It's put us in great situations. And I mean, it could have made a whole difference in some of these situations there. So that's another thing that a lot of people, we always think call, call, call.
Yeah.
But remember, they're visual first. And
Visual.
so if you're calling and they come in and they don't see anything, red flag, red flag. So
Yeah.
awesome tonight, man.
That bull right there was succumbed to a decoy.
Yep.
I mean, Joe had a decoy above a big ridge. We knew the bull was going to come into this lower kind of pond area. He sees the cow up on the ridge. Joe starts calling. He sees what he needs to see, and he walks right into our life, man. And I mean, beautiful example of that. You know, I've seen Joe kill several bulls with that predator decoy screwed on the end of his bow. And, again, don't give up, fellas. Even if you blow a scenario up, we called that bull that Joe killed, the first one with the predator decoy. We called them bulls back in 3 times because we boogered them once and shot at one and missed, and called the other one right back in there. And Joe hammers one at about 27, 28 yards and ended up almost called a couple of them back for chav. Y'all don't give up, man. Be patient.
Those situations are, to me, the best lessons.
No
I mean,
doubt.
yeah, I always say if I would have, harvested an elk the very first time I went out there, on the very first
I've
day,
been ruined.
my elk career would have been
Yes.
ruined, because then I was like,
Mhm.
okay,
This
box
is easy.
checked. I'm ready to move on to the next
yeah,
thing. This
yeah,
wasn't.
this
This
is
really
easy.
didn't pose a challenge. It took me
Exactly.
4 years.
He didn't ruin Manano. He killed one the first time, but that's because
Yeah.
you know.
Well, but he was already ruined mentally before. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, again, back to those learnings are part of our growth in
Priceless.
our
Priceless.
journey as bow hunters and as elk hunters in general, right? So
We learn something new every year we're in the woods, man.
Yeah.
Every time we go out in the woods, I mean, we're constantly trying to learn, get better at calling, get better at shooting, get better at identifying new areas, e-scouting, you name it, man. We're always trying to improve our game. And I hope you guys on the show tonight got a little bit of something that could help y'all from a lot of our failures, and a lot of our missteps and mishaps. Brother Richard, we can't thank you enough for sending in all your questions. And it was really spurred a lot of great conversation tonight. And again, man, we could do 3 or 4 podcasts wrapped up on scenarios and how successful scenarios played out and how scenarios where we didn't get what we wanted, right? I mean, I think I could think of 20, 30 on each side. So we definitely got a lot more podcast material there if we want to keep broaching those subjects. But if you guys like what we're doing out there, please subscribe, rate, and review us at our YouTube channel. And you got to go to Apple Podcast or iTunes to review us, and be sure to include your name and where you're from to get in on our drawing. And you too can get on that spinner winner wheel, and you can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. And just a reminder, if any of our listeners out there would like their questions answered on our show, just send your questions to info@ElkBros.com. That's info@ElkBros.com. And like we say down here in the Lone Star State, husbands, kiss your wives, wives, kiss your husbands, hug your babies, keep your broadhead sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Peace, peace, everybody.
I make my living working east of town, late nights in the summer till the sun goes down. I can't stop thinking about how my life's changed, but I'm still the same as I was young. I peeled them bark trees one by one, made a couple of dollars, filled my gas tank once. And I left my high school, barely made it by, but I found my way back Hunting, fishing is my kind of style. I float the Wainuchi when it gets hot. I'm proud of all the things that I've got. I'm digging the moss bags up in the sand, and after work a cold beer in my hand, picking wild berries off God's land, and drinking my buddy's homemade wine, living Northwest wild. This place has changed and it ain't for the good. There's a bunch of new faces in my old neighborhood, and the logging market goes up and down. There used to be a little export in this booming town. I fill my freezer from the river and the woods, kick it back with my old man. Yeah, my life is good, living Northwest wild. Hunting, fishing is my kind of style. I float the Wainuchi when it gets hot, and I'm proud of all the things that I've got. I'm digging the moss bags up in the sand, and after work a cold beer in my hand, picking wild berries off God's land, and drinking my buddy's homemade wine all the time, living Northwest wild. Living Northwest wild. Hunting, fishing is my kind of style. I'm float the Wainuchi